ってきた。危ない。
This story was told to me by my father, who was a trucker in the United States his whole life. It was something he was passionate about ever since he emigrated to this country. That was his first job, and later, he started his own company. But he always said that not every trip was smooth sailing. He drove across fast highways and usually traveled at night, since there was less traffic and he could make more deliveries, and therefore earn more money. But driving at night also meant that many strange and truly disturbing things could happen to him out there in the pitch-black darkness. Of all the terrifying stories he has shared with me, this is the one that disturbed me the most, and I believe it deserves to be told. This is the story. He said that one time he was traveling with a colleague because it was a very long trip and they would take turns driving. Night fell, and they were passing through mountain roads. The scenery, he said, was beautiful yet imposing, just the massive silhouettes of mountains all around them. They kept up their usual friendly chatter to make the trip feel shorter, with good music playing in the background. Then, that peaceful atmosphere was suddenly shattered. My father said that when they were driving through a forested area with no other vehicles in sight, only them passing through, his partner startled him by urgently telling him to stop. My father hit the brakes without knowing what was going on. When he turned his head in the direction his partner was pointing, he saw a small boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing among the trees. His partner told my father they had to help the boy, thinking maybe he and his parents had been in an accident, since the boy was all alone and his face was smeared with blood. They also noticed he wasn't wearing a shirt. Without hesitation, my father's partner got out to ask the boy if he was okay. My father decided to get out too, walking behind his partner. The truck's large headlights lit up the boy. They could see he was staring at them, looking confused, but not afraid. They approached slowly so as not to scare him. My father's partner kept asking questions. "Are you hurt? Where are your parents? How did you get here?" But the boy said nothing, just kept staring. That's when my father began to feel uneasy. His gut told him something wasn't right and that they needed to leave. But his partner kept walking closer to the boy. Finally, when they reached him, the forest was filled with the sound of his partner's screams. At the boy's feet lay the body of a man, already lifeless. And the most horrifying part, the man's face was missing. The boy was eating it. When the boy heard my father's partner scream, he immediately bent down and kept eating, as if to mark territory, as if he thought they were trying to take it from him. Then they heard footsteps. The crunching of leaves, fast and coming from several people, approaching from the boy's direction. My father and his partner ran to the truck and my father floored it, adrenaline pumping through his veins. They didn't stay to find out who was coming, but guessed it was the boy's family, maybe to help him, or maybe to hunt them. When they reached a gas station, they called the police from a payphone, since back then, cell phones weren't common. They told the operator what they had seen at that mile marker. But strangely, the operator didn't sound surprised. What really unsettled my father was that the operator told him to avoid that area in the future, and if he ever had to pass through, to only do so during the day. When my father asked why, the operator simply said he had to hang up to keep the lines open for other emergencies. He never found out what really happened there, or what still happens in that place. It seemed like it was something routine, something that never made the news or the papers. He and his fellow truckers came up with a theory that it was some kind of tribe living in those mountains, something the police didn't want to talk about. The most terrifying thing of all was that they ate people. And my poor father was unlucky enough to witness it firsthand. Before we continue, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a like, but only if you're enjoying it. That would help me a lot to reach more people. Thank you very much. You're in the horror section, let's continue with the next story. I was a truck driver for many years in my youth, and it was a job I truly enjoyed. I've always loved driving my rig, especially at night. There are so many mysteries hidden along the highways when darkness surrounds you. Things you just can't explain. This is one of those stories that made me firmly believe that evil exists, and so does the paranormal. I remember that night clearly. I was driving my trailer along one of the highways in U.S. I don't recall exactly which one, since this happened many years ago. I was already feeling a bit tired, still a few hours away from my destination. It was early morning, long before sunrise. Suddenly, I saw a woman signaling me, asking for a ride. She was an older woman, dressed in a very peculiar way, with a black veil covering her hair and a dress down to her ankles. I pulled over. Back then, I always stopped for people who needed a ride because the roads weren't as dangerous as they are now due to crime. It was common to see people hitchhiking, and nothing bad ever happened. I motioned for her to climb in. She opened the passenger door and sat beside me. She carried a basket in her hands, covered with a cloth so I couldn't see what was inside. I greeted her with, "Good evening, what are you doing out here so late? Where are you headed?" She replied rudely, telling me to mind my own business and just keep driving. I was annoyed. After all, I stopped to help her, and she acted like that. But I let it go and kept driving. About an hour later, we were nearing a small town. I asked if that was her stop, but she told me no and to keep going. I found it strange. What was she doing so far from home, in the middle of nowhere, at that hour? The ride was uncomfortable. She refused to speak. She just sat there, staring straight ahead, not moving an inch, always in the same position, completely silent and serious. After a few minutes, in a sharp and commanding tone, she said, "Drop me off here." What was strange was that we were in the middle of nowhere again, surrounded only by fields. I told her, "I can't let you off here, it's dangerous, animals could come out, or who knows what. I can take you closer to your destination." But she answered, "This is my stop, for you." I just obeyed. I didn't want her to think I was refusing to let her go. I pulled over, and she got out without saying a single word, no thank you, no goodbye. She simply began walking toward the fields, going deeper and deeper until she disappeared. I was confused but decided to keep going. Hours passed, and that strange night ended when I reached my destination. I rested, did my work, and headed back. But on the return trip, weird things started happening in my truck. First, there was this awful, indescribable stench inside, like a rotting animal. No matter how I tried to explain it, it was unbearable. When I got home, I had the truck cleaned inside and out, but the smell didn't go away. I had to keep working, this was my livelihood, so I endured the disgusting odor on my next trip. But things got worse. The truck cabin trailer started filling with cockroaches and spiders. I tried fumigating several times, but it was useless, it was revolting. Then it escalated even further. One day, while driving, I was about to make a turn when the steering wheel locked up. I couldn't move it. Just before a dangerous curve, I managed to brake and avoid a terrible accident. When I took it to the mechanic, he said there was no explanation, the truck was in perfect condition. I didn't know what to think anymore. I kept working, but the sense of danger lingered. The final straw came one night when the brakes suddenly failed on the highway. I crashed into some trees. I suffered some fractures, but nothing life-threatening. Still, that was it for me. My wife told me that maybe someone had cursed me, since she believed in such things. She asked if anything unusual had ever happened during my trips, and I remembered that strange woman I had picked up, that everything had started after that night. She insisted we call a priest to bless me and told me to get rid of that truck. So I did. I went to the priest and sold my rig. For a long time, I didn't drive trucks again. I still had trauma, and I didn't have money for a new one. About 2 years later, I returned to the job with a new truck, and nothing like that ever happened again. No strange smells, no mysterious malfunctions. In conclusion, that strange, evil woman had cursed me. Whether it was me or my old truck, I still don't know. But it taught me a lesson: never pick up a stranger, no matter how helpless they look, because the evil in some people has no limits. My grandfather was a trucker back in the 1980s, and he always used to tell us some of his adventures on the road. According to him, back then the highways in Montana were safe, and you could drive in the early morning hours without fear of disappearing. But just as he experienced a lot of good things, he also shared some dark and strange incidents that happened while driving in the dead of night. The following story happened to him and his co-driver, who was also a good friend, while they were driving through a rural area in the early morning. He told me they decided to take a rural shortcut because it saved them a lot of highway miles and would get them to their destination an hour earlier. The idea came from my grandfather's friend, who had more trucking experience and knew all the routes perfectly. My grandfather didn't hesitate to follow his advice. At first, everything seemed normal. The darkness was unsettling since they could only see what the truck's headlights lit up. The background sounds were just the night and the insects living in the countryside. The truck didn't have air conditioning, so the windows were rolled down, and those night sounds seemed to grow louder and louder. They kept chatting to pass the time, but suddenly something made them both go silent. They began to hear small laughs. They sounded like children's giggles, though they couldn't tell exactly where they were coming from. Even with the sound of the truck's engine, they could hear them clearly, so it must have been more than one child. What puzzled them was why there would be children in such a desolate area at that hour of the night. It didn't make sense, and they couldn't see anything, though they figured it was just too dark to even make out silhouettes. They were moving slowly because the road was muddy and full of potholes, so they assumed the children must be running alongside the truck, laughing non-stop. The truck kept moving, but the giggles continued. Eventually, my grandfather told his friend he didn't like this at all. There was no way there could be kids out here, it was almost impossible. His friend agreed, and they decided to roll the windows up despite the heat. The peace didn't last long. Out of nowhere, small rocks began hitting the truck from both sides. They were confused and scared because they couldn't see who was throwing them. Rocks kept striking the doors and windows. My grandfather suddenly hit the brakes. He had a strong character and wasn't about to let whoever was out there keep damaging his truck and disturbing his peace. He opened the door, grabbed a flashlight he always carried, and shined it into the brush. What he saw that night stayed with him until the day he died. Peering from between the branches were several, how could he put it, small men. Deformed. Like little goblins. They hid quickly when he shined the light on them, as if they didn't want to be seen. The moment he saw that, my grandfather jumped back into the truck and floored it, going much faster than was safe for that kind of road. But fear and adrenaline pushed him to get out of there as fast as possible. His friend kept asking what he had seen, but my grandfather couldn't even speak, he just wanted to reach the main highway again. When they finally got out of that area, he told his friend he would never take those shortcuts again. He would rather drive longer. Then he told him what he had seen. His friend was stunned. He said it sounded exactly like goblins, something he had heard other truckers talk about but had never believed. That night changed his mind. Believe it or not, no one knows for sure what really hides in the mountains and lonely woods after dark. Good night. I work transporting materials in my trailer. I've been living in the United States for several years now, and that's been my job since I arrived. I've always done short trips because I don't like driving at night. I'm afraid I might fall asleep since I'm a heavy sleeper, and I had already been in an accident once for dozing off while driving at night. But one night, a job came up that paid a lot of money because I had to cover a long distance, about 12 hours of travel. Even though I usually avoid such trips, I couldn't resist the large amount they were offering. I left around 10 p.m., drinking a lot of black coffee and blasting music to keep myself awake. After about 4 hours on the road, driving through areas with mountains and desert, I saw 2 cars ahead of me suddenly start slowing down. When I looked up, I noticed the sky looked strange. The clouds were opening in a peculiar way, almost like there was a huge hole across the sky. Even though it was 2 a.m., it wasn't completely dark. Instead, the sky had a grayish tint. Suddenly, I saw lights flashing inside the clouds, like lightning, but it wasn't lightning. It was something I had never seen in my life, strange and imposing. It looked so unusual that the cars ahead stopped, and soon there was a line of vehicles behind me. We were all watching this phenomenon. I grabbed my phone to record, but my screen went completely white. It was bizarre. I had just bought that phone from one of the top brands, and the battery was full. No matter how many times I restarted it, the screen stayed blank. I saw other people getting out of their cars, also trying to record, but soon they started checking their phones and realizing they weren't working either. Screens were either white or gray. We were all stunned, but what shocked us even more was when, a few kilometers away, we saw something slowly descending from the sky. It didn't crash, it just floated down until it touched the ground somewhere far off in the distance. We all wanted to capture it, but couldn't. Then, suddenly, many police patrols arrived. They told us to return to our vehicles and take a detour on another road because this one was now closed. People asked the officers what was happening, but they responded aggressively, telling us not to ask questions and to obey or face arrest. So, everyone turned around and took another route. I never found out what happened. Nothing appeared in the news or anywhere else, as if only those of us who were there knew it had occurred. I wish I had videos, but for some strange reason, all of our phones failed at that moment. Interestingly, once I got onto the other highway, my phone suddenly turned back on and worked perfectly, as if nothing had happened. Draw your own conclusions about this unexplained phenomenon. Personally, and according to what my family and I discussed, we believe they were UFOs that landed somewhere on Earth, and that's why the government didn't say anything. I don't know for sure, but it's something that will remain without explanation. What do you think? Thank you for listening to me. If you want to hear more road stories, dare to listen to the next video. I'm sure it will disturb you.